So you want to get things done. You want to achieve goals because you know that when you're moving on things, things that matter, things that you care about, and you're focused and you're getting traction, you're making progress, you know you're happier. You just are. When we're getting things done towards a direction that matters, it impacts how we feel. The issue is the big enemy, which is distraction. Distraction, vagueness. If we are not actively managing our focus, then we're not going to have it. Because think about it. The world is only getting more and more distracting. You look at any screen, and all of a sudden you're going to be pulled down this rabbit hole and this rabbit hole. You were trying to innocently check your email, and all of a sudden something, I mean, and literally, these things are flashing. You got ads flashing. And they're targeting you. And so that sounds interesting, looks interesting. That could be something that's useful or helpful or, again, just interesting. And you go down that rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you're not getting your things done. And so that kind of movement, that kind of progress that you're after, and ultimately that great link to your happiness, you have to actively make it happen. Let's look at 3 ways to make it happen. First, Kevin Unkrich calls himself a digital nomad. He runs 4 tech startups from one backpack. So wherever he is in the world, and he goes to a lot of different places in the world, he can run his business. And he's done it through the art of what he calls reducing the cognitive drag. He says you got to reduce the cognitive drag on yourself. And the big thing he looks at is the stuff, is the clutter. So you look around and you say, wow, all of this clutter, that like literally the things I'm seeing and the things that I have and that I own and that I'm having to think about and take care of, it creates a cognitive drag for you. So you've got to ask yourself, he challenges us to ask ourselves, do I really use this thing? Is there utility in this thing, or is it just sitting in a drawer and it never gets used? And by his paring down his life, and paring down literally into one backpack where he fits his clothes, he fits his tech kit, and he fits his toiletries, and he can be anywhere in the world. So what he's done is he's looked at, if I can get rid of that clutter, then I can focus on what's really important, and then I enable the rest of my life. It allows me to focus on my relationships. It allows me to focus on the career goals that I have. It allows me to focus on things that really matter. And when I'm focusing on things that really matter, I'm getting that traction, adding to my happiness. Secondly, you've got to reduce the emotional drag on yourself. If you're trying to get things done, you're trying to reach goals, you're trying to focus with all the distractions, one of the biggest distractions are emotional distractions. So I've got this thing I need to work on, but I just came out of a rough conversation with someone in my personal life, or I just came out of a very difficult meeting, or I just lost a big customer. There's some kind of frustration, there's some kind of an emotional drag. And if I don't actively manage that, that's going to yank me around for the next hour, maybe the next day, maybe the next week. And then I'm not going to get anything done. So if I really do want to make progress towards goals that matter to me, I have to have practices to actively manage those emotional drags. Whether it's, I'm going to take a walk around the block, I'm going to practice some deep focused breathing, I'm going to do a meditation, I'm going to do some yoga. A flow that you can use for yourself in terms of what you're going to go through mentally to enable yourself to release that emotional drag is starting with A, which is for accept. Just accept whatever just happened for now, for the moment. Don't fight it, just accept it. And secondly is R, and that is for the moment, release it. You may need to deal with it, but if there's something you need to focus on right now, you're not going to deal with it now. So you release it for now. So A is you accept it. R is you release it for now. And then C is for commit time. Commit time is something that we talk about. You set these blocks of time during your day that are focused on, that are dedicated to something that needs to get done during that block of time. So you get back to your commit time. So your flow there is ARC, A-R-C. Accept it, release it, then get back to your commit time. And then you'll deal with that thing when you can deal with it. But this is going to allow you to focus on something that matters so that you can achieve your goals, add to your happiness. Third, If you want to focus and really get things done, which will only add to your happiness, then you've got to reduce the physical drags on yourself. Physical drags are things like the tension that just drags you down, the stress that just drags you down, the lack of sleep that just drags you down. You've got to find a way to shore up those drags, reduce those drags, ultimately eliminate those drags so that you can have the energy to focus on the things that matter. So if you have tension in your life, and who doesn't have some level of tension? If you've got close to or actually unmanageable stress in your life, if you're tossing and turning at night, you have to make that a priority. Otherwise, you're fighting against it. You're fighting against what you need when you're trying to get things done during the day. So you've got to have your active practices of whatever your bedtime routine is. You got to have meditation. You got to have that unwinding time. You got to maybe take some good supplements. Maybe there's meditation. If you're not, and in our business, we call it earn. If you're not earning it, E is for exercise. If you don't have a regular exercise regimen, which will absolutely bust through tension and stress and add to your sleeping. If you exercise, attitude is the A. To earn it, exercise, attitude. You really got to look at your mindset. Third is rest, getting that rest and prioritizing that. And then nutrition. Look at what you're putting in your body, because that can actually add to or release some of your stress. So looking at those things, looking at earning it, giving yourself a practice so that you can reduce those physical drags and you can focus. So if you really want to focus and cut through distractions, if you want to make progress on goals that really matter to you, which of course will ultimately add to your happiness, then you've got to consider, how am I going to release the cognitive drains on myself? And a lot of that has to do with the clutter of distraction. And secondly, I'm going to think about, how am I going to reduce the emotional drains on myself? What active practices do I have in place for releasing stress? And then I've got to release those physical drags and get rid of those physical drags and drains on myself so that I do get sleep, so that I do feel strong, so that I have that stress release, so that I can focus through the distractions on things that matter, achieve goals, add to my happiness.